For Dead by Daylight to be the Smash Bros of horror, there are far more obscure chapters that I feel should have a place in DVD. Ones that I'm confident not too many people are thinking about. If there is a list of killers you've been wanting to see, I doubt the last killer most would think of is Carrie. With the devs adapting the 1976 Stephen King classic Carrie into DVD, which would have to be a dream come true considering Stephen King's ownership, I believe Carrie would be a fascinating killer with fun, forceful aspects to her power that will make playing her feel fresh yet familiar. In case you're not familiar with the title, Carrie is a 1976 horror mystery about a young female teenager, Carrie, who once hits puberty for the first time, starts to discover a force within her that gives her telekinetic powers, being able to manipulate things with her mind. She unfortunately gets bullied in her school for being the shy outcast type aside from the other people, making her a vulnerable target. To add to her trouble, Carrie's mother is strictly religious and manipulative to Carrie when it comes to her religious beliefs, but Carrie just wants to live her own life. However, a school prom goes wrong when Carrie's central bully decides to pull a cruel prank on her, having her obtain the most votes for prom queen just so she can pour a bucket of pig's blood onto Carrie. All hell breaks loose and Carrie wipes the floor with bodies upon bodies being tormented left and right from Carrie's rageful force, killing anyone she sees in sight with her force, blocking the exits as carnage ensues, releasing hell upon all those who wronged her. Now the entity will clearly take advantage of Carrie's rage, using that same blind rage from the night everything fell apart, doing this to control Carrie's perception, making her see survivors as all those who wronged her. By the entity manipulating Carrie's mind allows it to interfere with her force, amplifying its power. Carrie was taken by the fog right before her own death, but notice she wasn't in her prom dress covered in blood. The entity will be corrupting Carrie's mind to the point of eternal suffering inside the realm, cycling her worst memories on repeat inside her head for her to endlessly see. The entity manifests Carrie's appearance to the night of the killing spree, making her see that as her worst memory. With that context in mind, how exactly would Carrie be presented in game? Carrie will be a hard 4.4 ms killer with 40 meter radius and average height. Her weapon will change every time and be the most unique out of the game. Basically, the entity will spawn random objects such as wooden boxes, glass bottles, containers in the map, if not just present in the map already, to basic attack survivors with. You see how the reverse bear trap spawned in Pig's hand? It will technically be just like that for Carrie whenever she's about to attack. However, to take simplicity into consideration though, maybe she could have a set weapon where she's holding a flurry of sharp objects in the air like scissors, knives, cutters, similar to Vecna's blade levitating over the palm of his hand. You're probably wondering why sharp objects though. That's because in the film, that was how she killed her mother out of defense for her mother trying to murder her. Or sacrifice her as the manifestation of evil in her eyes, I should say. Before Carrie's birth, her mother was raped by her father, and because of the night Carrie was conceived, religiously speaking, the mother believes she was conceived in sin, quote unquote. That's the reason why her mother thinks she has this power. The mother believes it came from sin and evil. The sharp objects can be the default while other types of objects floating in mid-air are set for a variety of different cosmetics. By the way, I might say hold a lot, but I don't actually mean Carrie holding what she's supposed to hold. I mean it will be levitating over her hand. Some of Carrie's animations would be very similar to Sadako, since they both share that telekinetic aspect. They can of course make Carrie's more unique and different compared to Sadako, but Carrie would hold survivors in the air similar to Sadako as well, of course. Carrie's power, Force Pursuit, would have a mechanic where a cycle of up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, and right arrow, allowing you to push the survivor from a distance toward that chosen directional path. If the survivor collides against the environment, that will cost them a health state. If survivors aren't pushed into anything, they won't lose a health state. It would take survivors 3 seconds to get back up after being pushed and landing on the ground. It would also take survivors 3 seconds to recover from getting pushed into collision. The combination of killers integrated into her power will be Pinhead, Vecna, Wesker, and Huntress. Pinhead because her power would technically be just like Pinhead's when it comes to setting up her power. So just like Pinhead, as soon as she presses the power button, you must adjust your icon and control her projectile. The icon can also pass through collision just like Pinhead. However, her icon is more limited in range though. Her icon has shorter setting distance, so she could set the icon only that much further away from her. So Carrie is basically Pinhead mechanic wise, but you're literally controlling Carrie's force from where she's standing. So overall, when it comes to this part of the power, instead of the projectile projecting chains, Carrie could use a force projectile to control and hit the survivor with, but it can navigate just like Pinhead's chain. Maybe with farther traveling distance though when Carrie launches the projectile. So as soon as the force makes contact with the survivor, they're impacted. Once that survivor gets hit by the projectile, they're pushed into the selected direction that Carrie inputted. The shifting of which direction she can choose to push survivors in will look exactly like Vecna's power cycle for Carrie to select. So if Carrie selects down arrow as her input and the survivor is running straight ahead but gets hit with the projectile, they will be pushed back toward Carrie, chasing the survivor right behind them, where she could then follow up with a basic attack. If Carrie has up arrow selected as an input, and if a survivor is running towards a wall up ahead, if they get hit with the projectile, they'll go crashing face first right into the wall. The pushing distance will be just like Wesker's throwing distance, can be adjusted with add-ons. If Carrie selects the left or right arrow for survivors to be pushed, they'll be pushed in the desired direction. If Carrie pushes one survivor to another, both survivors will become injured. If the survivor that got hit by the push survivor is injured, they suffer from deep wound. Every time Carrie uses her push power, the power goes on the cooldown for 7 seconds before it can be used again. When Carrie pushes a survivor into collision, she suffers from a cooldown of 4.5 seconds. When Carrie pushes a survivor into nothing, she suffers a cooldown of 1 second. If survivors are pushed into Carrie herself, they do not collide with her, but instead go past her. Survivors must break line of sight in order to counter Carrie. This won't directly counter Carrie, considering she still may be able to hit you with the force while line of sight is broken already. It just gives her less of a chance to hit you with the force, since it will be harder to pull off when line of sight is broken, considering she will have to navigate her force in certain ways in order to hit you with the push, since the icon would have a short setting distance. The presentation of her force can look like a force of wind almost, to of course display the power. This would probably be the most unfaithful thing when it comes to adapting Carrie. You can't literally see her force in the film, but for game reasons, something at least to the slightest bit has to be shown, since survivors must counter it. Maybe the design of how her power looks can look like it was tampered with by the entity, showing that the entity is in control of her, so the outline of her force can have the entity's aesthetic in a sense. You know how it has that fire fury-like aesthetic to it? Something like that. Maybe it could just look like a levitating trail because it won't look as thick, almost like Knight's patrol path design, but instead it looks like a fury dark orange with the entity's theme to it. That's really the best way I could describe it. It can also just look like Oni's blood orb or a levitating trail of blood to symbolize Carrie's rage. A levitating trail of blood tailing you down during a match would be an unsettling sight to see in my opinion nonetheless. Carrie can also throw drop pallets at survivors. The mechanic will work very similar to Huntress while aiming and throwing the pallet, just with a much bigger hitbox since pallets are of course larger than hatchets. Carrie can decide to hold the pallet as well instead of throwing it right away. The pallet will be Carrie's temporary weapon while holding it. If she hits a survivor twice with the pallet, it breaks. If she throws a pallet, it breaks on impact against environment or survivors. When Carrie is about to hold the pallet, you will see her lifting the pallet before it starts levitating over her hand. This process will take as long as it takes to break a pallet, which is about 3.5 seconds if I'm not mistaken. Instead, Carrie would just be lifting the pallet instead of breaking the pallet. Carrie cannot use her force power while holding a pallet. She can only use the pallet while holding it. So if Carrie is holding a pallet, she can basic attack the survivor with the pallet before throwing it at them. That's just something I can see people doing if this was a thing. Once the pallet is thrown, Carrie cannot perform this action for 10 seconds. If a survivor gets hit with a pallet in any way, they will suffer from deep wound. Added time to deep wound with add-ons. If they're already injured, they will enter the dying state. The Mori can be that Carrie repeatedly lifts the survivor up in the air and slams them into the ground as they keep landing on their face. As she does it, their face gets more and more messed up in the most grotesque way as possible, until the last part when she slams the survivor right on their face one last time in the scorpion position, breaking their neck in the process. This will probably be the most unintentionally hilarious Mori in the game because of how comical or cartoon-like it might look. Still brutal as hell though for Carrie. I just want to say I know this was pretty short, but that's just because that's how simplistic I can see Carrie working on paper, though I feel she would be kind of challenging to play in some angles. I see her simply being a killer who uses force manipulation to push survivors all over the place while throwing pallets at them as an added unique touch that we've never seen before in game. It's unlikely that we will see Carrie for real because Carrie is owned by Stephen King, but maybe somewhere in the future we will see something. If the devs were to obtain a license from Stephen King, it will hands down be it. So if we were to see Pennywise in the game at some point, who knows how long that will be, maybe, just maybe, you'll see Carrie. Only because I feel like the more obscure licenses can wind up being the biggest surprises to see in DVD, by the way it's adapted. With a killer like Carrie, I'm curious to see how the devs would tackle her power and make her fit right in without being too powerful. Maybe she sounds too powerful in my concept, but that's just the best way I can see her working unless there's other ways that you guys may get creative with her. I do have one question though. If Carrie was in DBD, what would her Prestige 6 outfit look like if she's already drenched in blood as her default? Maybe on top of the blood there would be guts and other insides on her. I don't know. Just something I thought about. Anyways, what do you guys think about Carrie getting added to DVD? Do you like the concept? Do you feel Carrie would even be possible to include on a mechanical level? Let me know down below. Love y'all. Take care. I'ma see y'all in the next one. And peace.